Hi, welcome to Urban Insights. I'm Jayashree Kuru. Today we're talking about land digitization of land records, documentation. What is the status in the country? What have we achieved over the years? India has been talking about correcting its land documentation for a long time. It's a complex process. Different states have different challenges. And today we're talking about what's happened over the years. I've got Deepak Sanan. He's an IAS officer, a former IAS officer who has worked in various capacities, has dealt with public policy. Mr. B.K. Agarwal, who's dealt with policy himself, and he's today a consultant in various capacities, and more or less a walking, talking computer on land digitization, land records, and things like that. I've got Sanja Mandava. He's from Landeed. Landeed has done an immense amount of work on land documentation in the country. Thank you so much for joining me. And let's start with Sanjay. Sanjay, how long have you been in this space? And very quickly, if you could run through, for those who are not aware of your work, if you could quickly run through what you've been doing.
Sure. We've been in business for about 2.5 years now, 2 years. And essentially, you can think of Landeed as the India's fastest and most comprehensive property title search engine. We cover 24 states. We interface with almost 100 plus departments at this point. So anything ranging from encumbrance certificate to sale deeds to property tax payments and registration department, revenue department, municipalities, surveys, we take care of all of that. And our ultimate mission in India is to essentially add a blue tick mark next to your property, similar to how you have it on a social media profile to say that person and profile is authenticated. We want to do the same thing towards real estate in India. So that's our mission. And today we have over 6 million downloads and we run over 15 million title searches.
And what was the gap in the market that you were facing?
Yeah, I think I speak about this quite a bit. When I first started, I had land encroachment issues myself. So I was a personal, I was at the front row seat of having faced that issue. And I think when we first initially started, we looked at it from perhaps a more academic point of view, thinking that, hey, look, wouldn't it be great if we had a central repository of property records for the entire country? But what we found out as we delved into it deeper was, I think, a bridge between the respective departments within the state and forming a connection and integration between them is far more important than just having a central repository of title documentation. Because essentially what we see is over 95% of our searches come from people that own property within their vicinity or their city or their state. And so very few Indians have a need to start pulling title records from another state per se. So that's essentially the journey of how it's been. And we found that these departments within the state operate almost in a silo onto themselves. So we set about to kind of form a bridge between that, one single property, one single software, one single blue tick mark to authenticate, validate, and verify the property title ownership.
Deepak, let me bring this conversation to you. What Sanjay says is a common complaint across India. Different departments, different documentation, different forms of documentation, and different stages of documentation. So that in some states, you can register the same property many times over and use that as a valid document. But there's no synchronization between different government departments. Is that something that you have ever tried to tackle with? Have you faced it, the problems that come through with it?
So let me put it this way, Jayashree, that what we have is we have to go to the origins of what we have. We have a presumptive titling system, which for most of India, which is rural India, for a start, relies on the concept of having a record of rights, basically a textual record, which was established in colonial times for the purpose of collecting land revenue. So it had two purposes. It wanted to see who should pay the tax, the land revenue, and how much should they pay. So the land's productivity would be gauged from an agricultural standpoint to decide how much land revenue it should bear, which in effect meant that the most unproductive lands historically were even left unmeasured. And which were those? Urban areas. inhabited areas. They yielded nothing in an agricultural age, so they were left without a record. And those, in a market economy framework in the modern time, have become the most valuable and have no record. And that's what one of the problems about the fact that there is the big hiatus is that they did not have a proper record. Doesn't mean that they had no record over time. What we've ended up with is, because we never looked at this whole issue, whether rural or urban, we never looked at it from a perspective that market economies, modern market economies need good title records to enable economic activity and transactions in an easy way. So we never concentrated on how to bring about better records from a titling perspective. So, an overall perspective, if you look at it, what is a good title record if you look at the international dimensions of it internationally, is that it should convey to us ownership. It should convey to us what is the area involved, what are the location of that property, and it should be a kind of unique ability to identify a property uniquely. We need to also, most important, other than ownership, area, location, and use, we need to be aware of every kind of encumbrance which affects the land.
Yeah.
Every kind of restriction which affects a property. Now, that consciousness, that's what I'm saying, the consciousness was not there that this is the role of what a titling system needs to have. And we never even to this date, I think we haven't still understood and internalized this, that this is what a titling system needs to be. In India, we need one more column always, and that is possession, because the amount of dispute we have with this issue.
Sorry, what is that? One more column?
Possession. We need to be clear about who possesses. And that is something which we often don't realize that is such an important facet or element of property, which in India we need to be aware of.
Sanjay knows all about it.
So much. Yeah. So that is one. And in the urban domain, as I said, we never really had a record. And we did start in the post-independence era. What was our interest in urban? Our interest in urban was, let's do some spatial planning. Let's have planned urban development. So we created, in many cities, master plans, etc. We created urban spatial records, but we never linked them to whatever nascent or whatever kind of land records we might have had. Often we didn't have, as I said, in the urban areas. But our municipalities and all did start developing property tax registers. But we haven't bothered to see those as possible nascent title registers. So the biggest thing, to go back to your question, is that we haven't thought of ourselves as something which, as an, when we look at public policy in relation to property, we haven't thought of that the state has a primary role in creating good, comprehensive, accurate title records. That is key to economic activity, development, progress. We never looked at it this way. And that, I think, continues to be a hiatus even to this day. I don't think enough people understand that even today.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And there's lots of, so even today when as say revenue secretary, I would say that I would like to see the revenue department not as a custodian of government property, but as the custodian of a title record.
Right, absolutely.
People would look at me aghast that, what is this conversation about? I mean, all our pride, our greatness comes from the fact that as land revenue departments, we are the custodian of this property, and suddenly this guy wants us to not be that. Yeah. So that's the biggest challenge. That's the biggest challenge. How do we mentally sort of align ourselves to thinking about property in a different way in policy? Yeah.
Mr. Agarwal, a few years ago, many years ago, India decided that our land records were in a poor shape. We allocated funds to it. Some states did a lot of work, some states a little less. There were states, most of the states had their own portals where the documentation access was loaded, or whatever, in whatever format it was loaded, and consumers, at least in 2021-22, when a lot of young consumers didn't were locked inside the house, were earning well but didn't know what to do, they were buying land. They were buying land in urban areas, and they felt some amount of satisfaction that they could actually go to that portal and check whether the title was there. That that gave them some amount of satisfaction, or lack of fear, shall I say. How do you view that exercise? Where are we in that? And what are we doing today with Naksha? We're creating a new format, right? We're trying to create much better records than we've ever had. Take us through that digitization process.
Okay. Thank you, Jasri. What you said that, we took lot of time and made lot of investment in digitization of land records. That is the great work which has been done. But that is only digitization of land records. That is a very, very, very important solid foundation is there. But as you also said that young people had a lot of satisfaction. They could see their record on the computer. That is the minimum thing a digitization could do.
Yeah.
But that is not a very great thing.
Yeah.
So once you have digitized those records, you have spent hundreds and hundreds of rather thousands crores and took around 15 to 20 years, then we can do a lot with that. And what we can do now, we should be using that data, digitized data, to give a lot of services to the people. As Mr. Deepak Sanan said, till now our department is not oriented towards that. We still think that we are custodians of some great record which has to be preserved, improved, etc., etc. What I say that actually we have to provide services to the people, and we require that kind of record. We require that kind of services which are required by the people.
Right.
So, unfortunately, a lot of work has not been done on that. So this whole investment will not be fruitfully utilized if we do not create services for the people. And there can be a lot of services, like for electronic conveyancing. People can talk to their broker on the basis of that record, share that land records with the architects and town planner, share that their records for applying for town planning permissions. Then what I'm saying is there can be so many things with that record, which is not being done. What I feel that there are two things are required. First thing is that because we have digitized this record, now a lot of government agencies should be provided access to that. For example, what Mr. Sanja Mandava is doing, he was telling about the bridge between different departments. Now this digitized record can be a bridge between different departments. Like for agriculture department is also doing the same thing, that they are doing some crop cutting experiments. They are assessing the crop damages, etc., etc. They are so same on the same layer, one layer of cadastral records. They can create their own layer, that what kind of crop is there, so anyone can see that and link it with the Khasra number or plot number. Similarly, there can be sort of if you go and construct a house, then you require that soil type. What kind of foundation has to be created? Someone may create that soil map and superimpose this on a cadastral record. So everyone will have additional information. Then property records, like municipal committee should be able to build their property tax record on the basis of same cadastral layer. Like courts, in the court there is some decree and the plot number is mentioned, which should be made mandatory to be mentioned. Then the court registrar himself can make an entry in that data, main data, and then whoever sees that record can see that this is already a decree on this thing. Birth and death register, that can be integrated. So once a person is dead, there is a remark in the remarks column of our cadastral record, there can be automatic entry that this person has died. Okay, so there can be so many things. So what I say, that first thing is that government should always think that what services we can provide to the people, how we can support land markets, how can we facilitate that. We are not custodians of our government land. That is, government is one of the clients, but private people are very big client, other set of client. Second thing is that first thing is the government should do it. Second thing is that we should involve more and more private sector. Like people like Landeed, they are providing such great service to the public. Now we should facilitate them so that, and they can come up with so many ideas. If we allow our cadastral records to be accessed by private people under proper terms and conditions, under proper security regulation, they will come out with so many ideas which we just can't imagine. And new geospatial policy of the governments, which has been issued by the Department of Science and Technology, that talks about that geospatial record created from public funds should be shared with the private sector also. So that is the thing, that digitization has been done. It is a great thing, but full potential of digitization has not been utilized. That should be utilized through government departments as well as through private sector.
Now, when you say this, actually what you're talking about is almost like an open source cadastral map on which everybody can keep loading information, right? With due security levels and firewalls and things like that. Sanjay, what stops this? How do you use cadastral maps? And
just in this, I want to clarify one point.
Yeah,
there are two things. There is one is a legal part of it, which says that who is the owner of this land, who is in possession. That will be certified always by a revenue officer or authorized officer.
Right.
But there is another information part of it.
Right.
So the information, that is also very useful for the people. So information part of it can be fed by so many departments and the private agencies.
Right.
So what I am saying is that both are important. Right. So we should facilitate both.
Right.
Legal part of it will be responsibility of the revenue officers, but information part of it can be fed from many sources so right. that people get benefit.
Yes. And can it be done on the fly by different people?
Yes, why not?
Okay.
Under proper regulation, we can always allow.
Okay, fine. Okay, Sanjay.
For example, person purchases a land.
Yeah.
He has a sale deed, a purchase deed in his hand.
Yes.
What prevents us to allow him to at least upload it, which will be pasted somewhere against that khasra number, and whoever downloads a copy of that, certification by Tahsildar will take time, let it be. But at least the person knows that this land has been sold.
Right.
If there is a petition in the court, at least person knows there is a petition. Right. Then he will take his own decision, whether he has to take risk on that land or not take. So that I am saying. And digitization has made it possible. Right. So we should use full potential of digitization.
Okay. Yeah, Sanjay, I asked you about the cadastral maps that you use. How do you do that? And do you have anything to add to what Mr. Agarwal said about feeding in information?
Yeah, I think what both of them have said are fundamental to this conversation and our discussion around this topic. Particularly Mr. Deepak speaking about the urban ROR. That is such a key point and so less discussed that it's almost a crime that we don't think about it as much as we do. He stated clearly about the need for urban ROR. Just to put this into perspective, right? Only 2 states in India have what we call an urban ROR format. It's Maharashtra and Gujarat with property cards. So every other state, right, has basic, sorry, you were saying?
No, I didn't say anything.
Mine are correct. minor correction.
Ah,
Yeah.
Number of states which do have urban RORs, but not in the same property
Right.
card format.
Correct. Yes. So that's the point I was also getting to, meaning that they either have absent RORs or urban properties in rural ROR formats.
right.
So these are the only two states that have a particularly urban focused representation of the property, urban RORs, which is a property cards in Mumbai and in Gujarat and various aspects. And this is such a this is kind of a disturbance because in the absence of those, the other cities are either using conveyance deeds or property tax receipts,
Yeah.
right? Or even electricity bills.
Yeah.
You would have never thought when you were paying your electricity bill in India that it was a form of title if you're a normal citizen.
Yeah.
But it actually is.
It-
Even a water bill, right? Anything towards that, showing your proof of possession is important. And I think it also goes down a little bit down to the DILRMP program, which I'm sure both Mr. Agarwal and Deepak would know more about. But one thing I want to say about that is, first of all, I have no criticism of it because without that, we would not exist. DILRMP was foundational for our very existence in order for me to operate today, right? And maybe I'm a little bit off on the numbers, but according to their last statement, I think they said something around 95% of the villages are digitized, 75% have surveys that are digitized, and 60% of them have spatial records linked to them. But I think beyond that, in 2016, if I'm getting this right, I think Ministry of Rural Development has stated DILRMP funds are actually for land and not properties, which would mean that it precludes the cities or municipalities from accessing those funds. So now the cities and the municipalities have to do it on their own.
Okay.
And that power actually shows because if you take BMC, for instance, in Mumbai, right, the BMC's balance sheet or income is greater than more than half of the states in India. Just BMC, the Mumbai municipality, right? So these are fundamentally important. And I think within the revenue department, better property tax collection, this is very fundamental to the development of our cities. But I think it also kind of speaks to the governance of the cities, which I've always argued that the cities should be independent of the state and have their own independent governance and run their own P&L and balance sheets, be able to raise their own financing and bonds, and actual, mayors have some power.
Yeah.
Right now, the way that the cities are used by the states are for tax collection to subsidize the rest of the time, the rest of the state, right? Which is kind of a disservice to the cities and why you have such low quality of living and urban infra planning. But yes, so even the maps, some states have it readily available. So Andhra, Tamil Nadu, all of them have FMB sketches or LP sketches. But then there's other states where the maps are not even available for you to easily access. There's a certain set of maps called Tipan maps in Telangana
Yeah.
that are no longer available online for you to procure, right? These master plans, for instance, if you take city, land use maps that you get, there was one map in a state I don't want to name where half of the properties were actually in the sea. So we had to use machine assisted, to bring them back on, replot it, because inside our app we do something called find by address, which means just by putting in your Google address like you do, we pull up title records. That was for us a laborious, highly technical like problem to solve
Yeah.
because you're taking and stitching together multiple different maps around the state, putting them together and embedding title data on top of it and putting a search parameter for you to pull up.
Yeah.
Right now, the search for urban cities in terms of titling is very, very poor. So Deepak ji hit it right on the nail. And I think Mr. Agarwal says is kind of speaking, we're speaking in the same tone, saying these departments must synchronize, without which there will always be black zones and gray zones, and there will be operators in that zone that take advantage of it. These are inefficient markets, in my opinion. But I think there should be separate sanctioning of funds if the cities are not doing it for urban surveys and better property collection. It's better for the state in the long run. And I mean, this is another topic, but one thing is, I think fundamentally that if India wants to do that and incentivize, one of the things it really needs to do is lower stamp and registration duty to the global standards of 0.5, 1 to 2%, and raise the property tax prices. that allow you to capture a wider net of property collection, because the cities are actually where they can pay. And that is, what we say in Landed as well. I hate it. Right now, I'm not able to serve farmers. We mostly pertain and help the urban users. So I hope that kind of answered and helped the discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
So let me just say, Sanjay, that this idea that of property card, I think we need to be very clear. What is a property card? Property card is actually very minor difference from the rural Satbara.
Right, right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to recognize that even our property card is actually quite primitive still. Most importantly, it doesn't really take into account vertical spaces.
Yes.
Not giving us the detail of actual property owned by people, vertical, and that is something which can be remedied both in urban and rural.
I heard Mumbai was doing that, right? The vertical property card?
It's starting. In fact, Kunal has just joined us. Naksha is a program to do that.
Got it.
Naksha as a program is aiming to say. So let me go one step back and say, this is an opportune moment that Kunal has joined us, that we identified that there was this huge gap in Indian policy on the most productive areas not having a record. And in the last few years, the government of India has recognized that. Quite startlingly, it has, for rural inhabited areas, it has the Swamitva program. And since last year, it has started what is being called the Naksha program. So for urban areas. So DOLR has actually moved away from your 216 guideline, which said, we'll only work on land, have nothing to do with urban property. It's actually moved away from that and is actually now spearheading even the Naksha program.
Great.
Now, in fact, we need to discuss, I think, at greater length, what are the issues with Swamitva and Naksha? That with the best of objectives, are they making headway? And if they are not making headway, are we recognizing why they are not making headway? I think these are the issues which need discussion. And I think it's an opportune time that Kunal has joined us. I think it would be great to hear from him how Naksha is doing, what's happening on that.
Okay. That you have been plunged right into the conversation, Mr. Kunal Satyarthi. He heads the Naksha program of the Government of India. So first of all, why don't you tell us what the Naksha program is for those who are not unaware of it? And then exactly the point that Deepak raised. Is Naksha on track to meet those gaps? We've been talking about what are the gaps in the property records in the country. And if you could talk about it.
Yeah, ma'am. I don't know whether Naksha is on track or not because Naksha has just started. So whether it is or not, and just 6 months, not even 6 months down the line. So we have started this program. So why Naksha? The answer is that there is extreme amount of fragmentation of land in peri-urban areas. And soon the agriculture lands, when they start becoming by conversion to non-agriculture, so-called, I don't know why they convert, but that conversion to non-agricultural land, the lands become extremely small, unmeasurable by the traditional systems, and extremely valuable. The cost goes out 100 times, 1,000 times. So our focus is on peri-urban areas. We realize that states which have some idea about city survey, like Gujarat and Maharashtra, Goa, Tamil Nadu maintains classically urban land records in Chennai, also are struggling. Currently, if there are 100 land property cards in Ahmedabad, there are 400 property tax holdings. So the whole city survey phenomena of these leading states is lagging by, is not able to keep pace with, because they are not using a comprehensive mission mode approach, not also using technology, not also using a combination of private sector and government sector together. Either way, it will not work. So we realize this, and also the great dichotomy between our registration system, as Agarwal sir is here, authored books on registration system. So I personally feel registration system destroys land records beyond recognizable content, because they don't talk to land records pre, they don't impact land records post. They're just standalone papers, which we presume that they are ownership document. They're not. They are just a contract between a buyer and a seller, witnessed by the government. If not witnessed, it is an agreement. If it is witnessed, it is a registered deed. And people are very happy keeping that copy, but that copy is not ownership. So we thought, and also that realization that in the same town you have so many registration deeds, so many people paying property tax, so many people having land records. The land record department doesn't give way very quickly. They keep on maintaining land record till the last limit, although the maps are totally out of sync with cities I've traveled across. And even in the heart of Lucknow, I've seen maps in the hotels I've stayed in, but they are not at all keeping sync. So this realization came that in the same town, you have different property taxation, different land records, different registration. Did forget about utilities. If you look at electricity bill and water bill and anything else, that is catastrophic. They don't talk to each other. So it was good to design a system. Primarily, my mandate is land records, but everything will sit upon land records. So primarily to make that journey comfortable, that we have land records in the heart of the city, adjoining the city, and therefore we are flying more peri-urban areas than urban areas right now. My area has gone up by 3 times. I started low, but it has gone up because I realized that peri-urban area is where the problem is and where we should treat. There's nothing much to do in the heart of Shimla or heart of Delhi in Chandni Chowks and Lower Bazaar. They are perfectly fine. People have settled down to a certain phenomena. So that's the why we are doing it. The use that is coming up in cities which are completing Naksha is property taxes raising by 4 times. And the whole system becomes integrated. There's one element of truth, one system that absorbs all this. It's easier said than done. I'm struggling with registration document. They're not spatial. So looking at all the registration documents in a Indira Nagar of the world is extremely difficult. You don't have those phenomena. So that's the idea about Naksha. We are doing a very small pilot, not a small pilot, 150 cities, not a small pilot, but a pilot within the DLMP program. We did not write a new program, but concurrently we are writing 3 different programs, which are at various stages of. So learning from this will be wiser. And technology portion is very small, but that is also confusing. Whether you use oblique camera or LIDAR sensor, so I thought I'll use all 3. Let me do all 3. Nobody knew. Nobody has used oblique camera in the country till now. And I'm sure the old 2D imagery are failing miserably, whether raised under the National Hydrology Program or NMCG or the Great Coastal Zone Regulation Program. They have flown drones. Flying drones is the easiest. But what quality of imagery you get from those are quite critical. So actually, I'm reflying most of the area. So that's briefly. I think I've gone on for some time. Please go ahead.
No, I think one of the things that you talked about, there are, we've got mission mode programs. We've got Amrut, for instance. We had smart cities. We had lots of programs which were targeted at certain areas of the city. Smart cities had picked up areas of the city. Now, has that been, you have all the property records in terms of land records, record of rights, the registration data, property tax data, the various bills, have they been synced? I don't know which of you can answer. Many of you have dealt with this, but in those mission mode programs, have we worked at least to synchronize the various records?
We are assimilating all the records that we got from Smart City and Amrut, but Smart City and Amrut measured a phenomena called building footprint. I am aware about that. I am measuring land, which is the boundary wall of the land. So we are marrying both of them together very tightly in the cities which have. I'm not doing it again. So, and they're fitting very well. So I just did a city, and the complete building footprint sits into the fences and the boundary walls, if you have boundary walls. If you don't, then both of them are similar and they are same. So if the roof touches the roof, then the building footprint is the ownership document. But where it is not, we are using those documents and those databases and syncing them together. That's the idea.
Yeah. Okay. Which means that from your 150 pilot cities, one second, from your 150 pilot cities, you are actually moving to the 4,700 odd cities, which are in various mission modes.
No, we'll move as gradually as possible, because Naksha will take 1 year to finish. After the learnings from Naksha, we would constitute a monitoring committee to look into the findings, both technical and administrative, what worked, what did not work, what worked in the mountains, what worked in the plains. There are going to be different learnings. Borrow all the learnings and then write certainly for 1,000 cities for next year, and then 4,712 cities by the time we'll have census. So I presume there are going to be 7,000 cities in the country, not ULB. So right now we're talking about urban local bodies. But currently also there are 7,000 cities as per the census, but they're all cities along the roadside. They're not recognized as urban local bodies. Yeah. So that will right from the learnings. Let's see whether we can do that as quickly as possible.
Right. Mr. Agarwal, you were asking something.
Yes, Mr. Kunal, you said very important thing that you said that you are facing this problem that your deeds, sale deeds, etc. They don't have a special description. Sometimes they have, sometimes they don't have. So I'm just saying that this is the great opportunity is with you because you are going to amend your registration act, or rather you are bringing a new one. Don't miss this opportunity. Now all those things which you are feeling or realizing in Naksha program as well in your land records modernization program, those can be brought in this registration act. And easiest thing to do is that I think present section 21, 22, a new, I don't remember, that land will be described, a property will be described only with reference to some government record. In rural area, it should be a record of rights. In urban area, till the time Naksha program takes off, maybe the property record or whatever. But spatial description is there. Once the spatial description is there, these two records, record of right, they will start talking to each other. There at present provision is that it should be described in the manner it can be identified. That is the general thing. So one can describe in any manner. And unfortunately, in new draft also the same thing has been written.
So, sir, so we are trying to do two things, sir. We are aware about this, and I strongly made that statement. I should not have made the registration department destroys land records. But what we are trying to do, sir, is that like Karnataka, I see Karnataka as a role model there. So if you want to register a piece of land in Bangalore or Karnataka, you need to pre-draw a sketch and subdivide between your brothers. It is not a problem for the society that you don't divide. If you want to sell, please subdivide between your brothers and tell us where that piece of land, not only in share and words, but also in space. So, and Karnataka is giving a short service, 10 days. If you don't then give, you'll have to take them to the, it's a delivery. So I think Karnataka has moved great, although the maps were.
You have to bring in the registration act.
Yes, sir. So
Just now.
Looking at the land records by the SRO and impact on the land record after the registration, sir. Pre and post. Both sides need to be tied up, and the old thing has to be cleaned up, sir. So actually, I think we were scanning a lot of sale registration deed across the country. I realized that if I'll do that, I'll take a lot of time. So we have moved now to digitizing the index one, where you have the name of the buyer, seller, and the address. That is making more sense to me right now. So we are digitizing all that, and we also working. Currently, there's a meeting going on with 5 companies across the world, including Cadastre and everybody. And the challenge is, if I give you different kind of records, can you look at the names and find out by address and pin all of them to a particular piece of earth? That is the dialogue happening in the other room. So if I give you some address and some spelling mistake, Bangalore, Bangalore, etc., can the system clean that and say, Mr. Kunal Satyarthi, Makan number so and so, Gali number so, and so on. So that is discussion happening that if I give you, and we are giving right now, database of 5 cities to 5 companies on pro bono basis, including Map My India and everybody in the world, and saying, this is your challenge. Please give us now, clean up and give us for every ward or every locality, all the documents onto one land parcel. So that's happening in the room.
Maybe we should bring in Sanja Mandava. He's from the private sector, somebody Landeed, which has worked on property records for the past 2.5 years. Sanjay, would you like to join the conversation and just brief us on how you handle this problem?
Yeah, I actually never thought this would be the channel I get to connect with Mr. Kunal. It's hard to reach someone in the government to be able to speak, but yeah, I think this whole point goes back to what Mr. BK was saying earlier about synchronization. As he mentioned, in Karnataka, they now do have those dimensionalities and maps that they require as part of the registration. We know this because we help with registrations for a lot of large developers in Bangalore. And I think Kaveri has also implemented this new EPID system, which is a big plus. This is how it should be. This is the way things have to be, right? And now you're basically able to take an EPID and to some extent pull documents from different departments. That has now become the common denominator for TESOLs and people to recognize. But still, even with that, you'll realize you'll have an apartment building in Karnataka, let's say, that you're doing registration. There is an instance where one side goes to the BBMP for a Kata transfer, which is again good because that's moved to e-Kata. Then you have a building a few kilometers down, then you'll have to go get a panchayat Kata transfer, which is now digitized, and you have to do it manually. But I think all in all, this is the right direction. And if there's any space for players like us to operate, because we actually deal with linking the title deeds with the spatial records that are there. Like I said, we have a solution within our app where you say you put in an address, and using that Google address, we embedded title data by taking the different maps and pulling up the title records using that.
But
So
you
we
must
have quite a
also
few
have faced the
people.
same problem that he's talking about. Bangalore, Bengaluru,
Yeah,
all that. How did you
same
resolve?
property, spelled different ways
Same property spelled
between
differently.
departments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you resolve that?
We had to use AI/ML. I basically had to hire around 20 plus people. We had to hire label and annotators, take the index of all the different addresses, see similarities, and adjust for those. And then we put up something called, it's kind of like a fuzzy search, but now we're moving towards semantic search. So even if it's similar spelling, we still help you pull that up. I'll give an example, right? In most of the government portals you go to, you have to pick the village, the district, even the SRO. Now, a normal man sitting in his house, he's not going to know which exact SRO he needs to go to. Like he's going to know his area, but he's not going to know the SRO, right? So we took those entire three parameters and combined it into a single autocomplete, like you would see when typing in something on Google search. So it was a lot of manual combined with machine learning work to get to the similar address between departments.
Oh. Actually, Deepak, one of the things that Mr. Satyarthi spoke about was how he's focusing on the peri-urban land, because that is going to get pulled into the city, and that if there the documentation is weak, then you have a problem. And this we've seen in, whenever the government announces that there is going to be something. Like, for instance, there is the Jewar airport, there is the Navi Mumbai airport, there was the Bengaluru airport. Between the Hyderabad, the airport, between the city and the airport, there is this humongous property there, which was primarily rural, little bits of the urban areas in between, and very poorly documented. And lots of investors had gotten and bought that property and held on to it. They don't necessarily want to transfer the documentation to their names. So they are holding it, they've given some money. It's a very fuzzy kind of thing. And land documentation has been fuzzy. So first of all, I'll talk to Mr. Satyarthi. When you do the peri-urban areas, especially the ones that have the most propensity to be pulled into the city, what are do you find the challenges greater there in terms of existing records, what you are doing, reconciling all of that? And then I'll go to Sanja Mandava once more. So I think I was asking Deepak to comment on this first, and then go to Kunal Satyarthi.
Okay, we can go to Kunal. It's not.
Go to no.
Not
If you have a comment, and then we'll go to Kunal.
No, I think let's hear what policy is about.
Okay.
Certainly, what you're saying is true, that this is an issue. In fact, policy needs to go down and examine the problems from the context of what has already happened. There's no point saying, I want a perfect world.
Yeah.
I need to understand what is the nature of the imperfect world.
Right.
Right. And therefore, and that imperfect world, what incentives bred that? What kind of incentives need to be changed to not have that in future? But at the same time, how do I set right what has already happened?
Absolutely.
I can't just say, I want a perfect world and I'm going to just measure it and somehow get that perfect world. You won't get it.
Yeah.
You need to examine exactly what's happened. As you rightly said, people are holding on to say with power of attorneys.
Yeah.
What am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
In a legal phenomena today, where the Supreme Court says a power of attorney, rightly, in my view, at one stage, it has said that post the amendment of 2001, power of attorney is only an instrument to assist in the conveyance. It itself cannot become an instrument of conveyance to be conveyed.
Yeah.
If that is the case, and now with the latest judgment last a couple of months ago, which says even if you manage to register on the basis of an earlier power of attorney, and you did do a registration later, I'm not recognizing it.
Yeah.
It's not a valid document. You've got to now look at how do you legally, what kind of law do you need to do to set right the past?
Right.
The past is not going to go away.
Yeah.
I've got to think about it. That what do I do with all that vast networks of power of attorneys, of people holding, as Sanjay said, people have used electricity bills to transact. People have used, all kinds of documents across urban India, rural India to transact, to do business with each other. I've got to think about how to set it right. I can't just close my eyes to it.
Yeah.
So I have to think about incentives to make sure that the future is right, and I have to think about laws to set right the past.
Mr. Satyarthi, can I get your views on this?
So three portions of the town, and I, after having traveled to almost all the 100 towns, at least by now, and 17 states, and I'm going to see all the 150. There are three portions in a town. One portion is the core of the town, which is like a Swamitra program, which is like a greenfield program, where you don't have any records. Bhopal core or Kanyakumari core or Delhi core has no records at all. No land records. Must be in Bahadur Shah Zafar time or some time. I don't know when the last land record was maintained for the city of Delhi. One third of the Delhi, half of Delhi is Chanaga Bilad Rakhta from my records. They're all grazing lands that have been converted into. So I'm not getting into that right now. So that is one portion. The second portion is the second wave of urbanization, which you see if you're looking in Delhi context, south extensions and Greater Kailash. They are 2-floor, 3-floor, and the city grows like that. And then you have Dwarkas coming up suddenly when the land prices go so high that you can't live in bungalows. So you start hanging on to, with your pots onto the apartments. So there are three portions. Now, if you look at the three portions, the easiest portion to do land records is the Dwarkas. Extremely easy. You can do it tomorrow. I have the maps of Genesis and Dwarka. I can do very quickly. And Manish, my batchmate and friend who is traveling Bangaloreans, is doing it around the clock. So that's easy. The problem is not also in the core, because core people are happy because you'll get some records. They'll get some records. Like, it's complicated. Chandni Chowk is extremely complicated. As sir was saying, it's only attorneys and attorneys. You will not be able to find out who the chain of custody of registration deeds. You'll never find. There was a scheme of the government PM Uday. It has a list of documents. I've seen that. So anyway, so the second portion is the middle portion of the town, where you have growth, which is fenced, which has land parcels. So, you can figure out what I'm talking about. So past has gone wrong. In fact, I'm being curious. I tried to do once registration deed ka mapping of Guwahati and civil court case ka mapping of Guwahati and criminal court case ka mapping of Guwahati. Everything falls into peri-urban area. So I'm beyond reasonable doubt that registrations happen in. Nobody sells in Chandni Chowk. They just go by power attorney. Nobody registers a deed in Chandni Chowks of the world. All the registrations are happening currently in this town in Ghaziabad peri-urban and Gurgaon peri-urban. City has exhausted registration unless you can buy it 3 crore rupee a flat or something that you can buy. People don't buy it. It just gives a feel-good factor. So that is my second portion. The third is if we are able to reduce, 2/3, McKinsey report, 2/3 of the civil court cases are because of land, and not because. And I was trying to, my team is trying to dive into the whole thing and trying to figure out what kind of disputes. Believe me, most of the disputes is for where my land is, not who is the owner. Who is the owner is extremely low portion of the dispute. People know who the owners are. One of the brothers will say, I have a bill from one of my maternal uncle. That's it. And title deeds will anyway go to the court. So dispute is about space. Dispute is about who owns the patch of land near the road and who can sit on the back side of the road. That's the urban land dispute. So correcting the process beyond making registration system completely talk to land record and impacting land record is a solution for peri-urban's phenomena. Now, I'm having a talk with Mahua that we should do all the master plan areas 5 centimeter drone mapping and creating urban land records, because that would be great to migrate them into, now bring the mill of registration on and start registering. So for the past, I think cities that have done, it's not a huge problem. It's not a huge problem. In fact, I'll not quote the numbers of some of the cities. It can become extremely political. 10 to 15% encroachments are normal. We have measured the land. We don't know who the owner is. It is for the state government to determine whether they want to give ownership by power of attorney or by bijli ka bill or pani ka bill. Not my cup of tea, but that has to be, every government will love it. And one of the politicians was telling me, good that you've given me a database of how many encroachments are there in the city. It will help me in the 4th year of my I think we are not telling that people you should forcefully give ownership. If you're clear, give title of ownership. If you're not clear, please don't give. But you are measured. You know there's a building. How long can you keep a closed eye? You are getting electricity bill, you're paying property taxation, but only thing is you don't want to recognize him as a registered owner. Now the state governments have to take that call. That's not my job, but that dimension is extremely low. Yeah, variations in construction are huge. Not my job, Mahua's job and urban development jobs, but extremely high. I take permission for 2 floors, I make 5 floors. I take permission of 1,200 square meters, I make 5,000 square meters. I take permission for residence, I run a shop, an industry. Very common, 50%, 30% of the city show this phenomena. So I don't know, that is not my, I'm steering this hornet's nest, but those journeys are to be taken. But the future, if you weave these 3 systems together and have good land records and good title determination, I think futuristically, peri-urban areas will be fine. In the city, we'll have to go through the route we are trying to figure out. That is what 6 cities, states currently are doing this, and they're also realizing the same thing. But the disputes are less, 7%, 3%, 4% is the problem. Why should not be a complete 94% or 96%? Why should be scared about 6% not having? They're there. Everybody knows they're there, right? Now that is a dialogue between the state government to figure out how they recognize them as owners or not them, or throw them out as encroachers if they have the guts and the will. I don't know. That is the state government's I don't want to comment on that.
One last question, I think very important. With this kind of effort to clean up the land record system, are we moving towards title insurance? I had a developer from Bangalore telling me that he bought a property. Everything was paid for. It was the due diligence was done. Every registration document was checked. But when the final, in the last leg of that, he'd already submitted his plans and everything. But when he was actually figuring out everything, one boy came up, an 18-year-old, who said that I was a minor and I was also part of that entire thing. So therefore, there is a dispute. Now, these kind of things need to be resolved at some stage. We are 78 years old as a democracy. We have to figure out, and we are a very rapidly growing economy. So these are things that need to be settled, or at least a resolution process has to be there, right? Only then can we have insurance of land titles. How do we, are we anywhere on the road to that? Mr. Satyarthi.
Far away from titling. We have a model titling act given by the DOLR. Please read that and implement in your state if you so want. People have implemented and taken back. I'm aware about the phenomena. Assam is trying to bring a titling act. Andhra Pradesh brought a titling act, took it away on the first day of the new government. So titling is a glorious thing. I'm not a great fan of titling. I think clarity on where my land is and who is the clear owner is a good quality of land record. That is what we want to achieve. If I know who actually are the owners, take out the dead people. Currently, 30% of the records have dead people. And some of the states have 100% dead people in the record of rights. We are talking about that and talking about titling. So I think reality is far away from what we are talking about. I'm not a great fan of titling. We can't be sure. When the measurement was done for revenue, for taking extraction of revenue by agriculture, by irrigated or what you're growing in Kharif and Rabi, how can you make it into an ownership document and a position document with surety unless you go through the rigors of measuring that piece of land? Every inch becomes very important. So I don't think titling is critical at this stage, but yes, there should be some certainty. Bankers come to me and they say we spend so much on the attorneys just to make sure that this is the real title and he is the real owner and all that. So at least that portion of the journey should be cleared. Titling, we can move a bit later once we are sure about our. We are talking about cadastral maps of 1964, 1924, not updated for 60 years. States of Bihar and Jharkhand have not updated the record of rights for 100 years. I was telling the honorable highest officer in the government of Jharkhand that everybody in your record of right is dead. So we are cleaning up that system, and that will take some time. Titling in agricultural land may be tried by some states. They have tried, but Assam is the one I'm watching. But I don't think they've gone ahead and said, if agar kam aayega, to government will pay. If more will come, then you pay me. Kind of phenomena. So there are interesting things happening on titling, but I'll take it with a pinch of salt. A lot of salt.
Sanjay, you were talking about something about insurance and titling. Would you like to mention that?
Yeah, I have a few points about it. This is our space. So we look at global best practices and what's also possible in India. So India does have a form of title insurance. It's called developer title insurance, which no developer will ever buy in his right mind, right? The only time maybe he might buy is if his, private equity backed, and to please some Western, investor, he might get it for compliance sake as a sign off. But otherwise, I'll give a small quote from a developer. So we work with 3 of the top 5 developers in Bangalore. And one of the developers told me, Sanjay, when I asked him about this, he goes, in 2016, RERA mandated if the apartment building's over 8 units or over a certain space, you need to purchase title insurance. And it's by the developer. And the developer goes, Sanjay, the tenor for this policy is around 12 to 15 years. So you tell me how the hell my land was cleaned 15 years ago, but not today. The features upon which this policy is built itself are fundamentally broken. This is not how good title insurance practices are supposed to be run in any country, because it's a private sector enterprise. So you look at the risk reward, right? And I want to start with like the first thing that we talked about. First is the circle rate, guideline value, and all of this. Now, if India continues to maintain 7 to 10%, depending on the state, and I'm talking from a practical standpoint, if somebody I know purchased land in Kerala, it's 7.5% is the stamp and registration duty, with another 2% stamp duty if it's land.
Yeah.
So total is coming out to 10.5, 11%, right? Now, they're not going to put real values on there. We all know, everybody sitting in this room, that whatever is written on most sale deeds is not the actual value upon which this property is being transacted. Now, if I'm going to set up policy values and real values are not on these sale deeds, now that's an additional underwriting costs. That's why banks also have special departments for valuations, right? So that's one aspect. But I also am in the corner of the states, given that now their taxation power with GST is centralized. For them, property and registration duties have become a major source of income. I believe for the most of the southern states, they go between 10 to 15% of their total state budgets. So it's a hard call for them to reduce it and raise, right? And the second thing I'd like to say is with the IRDI framework itself. Now, a lot of banks in India or financial institutions have a stake in insurance companies. Around the world, title insurance is what is considered a monoline form of insurance, meaning that if you do title insurance, you cannot do any other forms of insurance. The primary reason being that it is one of the only few insurance products in the world that's retrospective in nature, meaning it looks backwards, whereas all the other forms of insurance are actuarial, which means probabilistic and forward-looking. So your risk provision and the way you do your capital reserves are completely different for title insurance, which is why it should be monoline, right? Now, if you have banks that own stakes in these insurance companies and they're cross-selling, cross-bundling, which I think there should be some regulation about the way that banks are even supposed to do that, right? Now, why, if the reason that other countries consider monoline insurance and title insurance to be the way that it is because, for instance, I worked at a hedge fund. And now we looked at securitized products, buying a portfolio of mortgages together, right? Now, imagine I'm a bank that is giving a loan for that property, but also have an insurance arm that is underwriting title insurance for that. As a third party hedge fund that's buying these securitized products, I would not trust that instrument. So therefore, title insurance is seen as a separate line of insurance, and you cannot do any other forms of insurance,
Right.
Now, if we asked any of the existing insurers in India today, would they give up their other lines of insurance just to do title insurance? The absolute resounding answer is no. Neither will the framework allow an insurer to come in and do only title insurance, nor will existing insurers give up their other lines of business to do this properly, right? That is kind of like the catch-22 situation that you're in. As I was speaking, as I was saying to Mr. Agarwal earlier, when we approached, let's say, IRDI, we were told that we have to take other lines of insurance when we applied for it. The capital itself is not the problem, right? The minimum 100 crore paid up capital, all of that. If somebody has a good edge and you have private equity investors that are willing to invest, there's many that are willing to do that. It's great, right? So I think that developer title insurance needs to go away. It hasn't been a hit. We should not use that as an example for why we shouldn't do title insurance. And I think the IRDI framework in allowing title insurers to come up, because I think getting land titling right is a matter of state, it's a national importance. It's mission critical. Like anybody coming into the country, when they're looking at long horizons for manufacturing, they want to know that their payback period is at least guaranteed in terms of security when they set up their plants and their manufacturing, right? Why else would you do huge amounts of capex if you're going to have disputes over titles and the cleanliness of it? So that's what I'd like to say. I think it will start with IRDI allowing that framework for monoline insurances, understanding that whatever is working right now with the developer title insurance is a abysmal failure, and that's not what you should be using it as, and allow private sector participation into this far more fervently than we are doing today. That's my comment on it, and I think others are best placed to take this further. Yeah.
I think this has been a very productive conversation, and this is only the beginning of a conversation. I believe that land records and land titling and actually measuring the land is something that there is so much to be done on the ground, so much that we have tried to do over the past few years, and something that is ongoing, which is what Mr. Kunal Satyarthi brings to the table. And I think it's important that we carry this conversation forward. I hope to take this to the ILDC so that we could have a deeper discussion on this. And I think the reason why I keep picking this up is because I think a small example of the Delhi land pooling areas. The areas have been demarcated. It has been on the table for a long time. When you leave any land on the table, any policy on the table, every day you're losing acres and acres of land to unauthorized building. Once it comes, the chances are that after a period of time, we will authorize it. Who owns the land? Who got the permissions? Who gave the permissions? And what is standing on the ground? What does the government earn out of it? It is all fuzzy. It is all, much of it is illegal. Like Mr. Satyarthi said, many people may have died in the process. The owners may have died in the process. But the system keeps going on. We keep chugging along without correcting what is there. So like Deepak said, like Mr. Agarwal said, things need to be fixed at the base of the pyramid. It's difficult. It seems a near impossibility. But the fact that each one of us is talking about it and trying to, in our own little way, to at least keep the conversation alive and see where good practices are on, makes it worth the dialogue. So thank you.
One request.
Yeah.
Please make it easy for private players to interface with the government and work together. And I think that'll go a long way. I think private-public partnership would be super helpful. We often go to government and we say, look, we don't want any sanctioning of funds. We will invest. We will put up the capex. We will build the software. If we're happy to do it, if you do it on a revenue share basis as well. But a lot of time we get empty doors and silence. So hopefully some more coordination that would go a long way. We want the same thing.
Okay.
When the market rises, we all benefit.
Mr. Satyarthi, maybe you and Sanjay at some point of time should be having that conversation, but
I somehow miss Sanjay because I have heard almost 150 companies by now. So we used to have Thursday, Friday, 3 to 5 o'clock, me and my secretary available for any kind of people coming with any idea.
I'll come by.
And I was keeping a count of 151 companies including international and national. And in fact, I just saw a mail from some professor in IIT Bombay and Professor Rajiv. So we keep getting these mails, and immediately the appointments are given. So we don't work. We can't survive without the private sector. We are very sure. So even in Naksha, half of the job is for the private sector. But later half of going to that house and ringing the bell and talking to the person and the dynamics of local family is beyond private sector, has been proved beyond reasonable doubt by states which I'll not name, but they failed miserably because they trusted the private sector whole go. The last conversation has to be between the government servant and the family. So the Naksha also provides for a lot of places to give grievances and say yes or no, and no, then you can come back. So it's community driven. It will fail if one ward people don't participate in this program. So we're aware about that, both the community and private sector being extremely critical, and the institutions if they are worth something. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me.